The fundamental fact is basically that all human knowledge and ideas about the nature of what actuality is, of what's going on here, are inaccurate. So it behooves anyone that wishes to make any headway in investigating what's actually going on here, what one's actual situation is, what one's nature, the nature of one's being is, the nature of the being of the field of reality is, and so on and so forth. It behooves one to ignore the precedent set by all of the enormous body of knowledge that people have accumulated in terms of ideas and interpretations about what's actually happening here. The fundamental reason why these ideas are inaccurate is that what is happening here cannot be captured accurately through concepts, through symbols, through any kind of logical mapping, and so on and so forth. It's intrinsic to the nature of what this is that is the case. It's the only way that it can be ascertained is directly, and its nature can be ascertained, and its properties can be ascertained, is directly and irrationally. Now, fortunately, this is very easy to do because the very nature of your being happens to be such that you have direct engagement with the field of actuality. And it also happens that its irrational nature is one with your irrational nature, so you have the necessary mechanisms and paradigms of knowledge to assimilate it. But as long as one insists on trying to correlate the nature of reality with normal human philosophies and theories and so on and so forth, one is doomed to be confused and to be made dizzy with the incoherence of what is actually here by comparison with any human or normal version of what it supposedly is. Of course, the method of yoga is very, very simple. Let reality show you what it is. And it does so very directly and very fully. The only caveat is if you have preconceptions of what it is you're looking for or what you expect to find, those are going to get in the way and inhibit your noticing of what is actually present. Yeah, Nancy, is that a beckoning?
I remember at the retreat last November, what I found really valuable was paying attention to sensation, listening to sound without labeling anything.
So what about that?
I'm presuming this is part of, I don't know how to put it into words, but I was wanting to have a sense of incorporating the body with its presence or whatever you're speaking of.
Sure. Well, in actuality, there is no body. The body is a correlation, is a classification of certain sets of experiences, with contrast with certain other sets of experiences, which are categorized as not being body. So I see my hand, and next to my body, I see the computer, and it's not my body. So the distinction between body and not body is very arbitrary and essentially imaginary. All experience, by the very fact of its existence, by the very fact of its presence, is actuality itself, and as such is a complete and fruitful field for study of the nature of actuality. So anything you experience, however you classify it, if you classify it as body, if you classify it as not body, if you classify it as mental, if you classify it as imagination, if you classify it as anything whatsoever, if it actually exists as experiential actuality in your experiential field, then it is reality itself, and studying it is supremely valuable. But don't fall under the sway of human categories. You have to abandon human categories Forget about body, forget about not body, forget about subject, forget about object, forget about matter, forget about mind, forget about time, forget about space. Just here's this. This is, okay? And I'll allow you, you can use the notion here. This is here. Okay, good. So when I say this is here, what am I talking about? And that's the interesting question. Look and see. And of course you can look at the body, you can look at the not body. I mean, again, you can look at in all these categories, but all these categorizations are not accurate categories. These categories do not exist in reality. Reality is a single thing, okay? Actuality is one thing. It has no pieces, it has no parts, it has no subgroups, it has no subsystems. It presents as infinitely differentiated, which makes it very peculiar to investigate. So there's all this color and shape and sound and texture and feeling and notions and emotion and all of this inconceivable smear of experiential qualities that are presented with absolute instability, but none of them are anything other than the experiential field itself. None of them have any separate existence. None of them are subsystems. None of them are actual entities. There's only one entity that exists, and that is, in your case, that is your experiential field. That's it. That's the only noun. There's no other nouns. So a noun like body is imaginary. It doesn't exist.
So what I'm hearing is the experiential field simply is, period. I mean, that's just it.
Yes, it is. Look at. Just notice this the obvious self-verifying fact of that, and look at the way that is so. And nothing is being negated. What you're used to thinking of is your body or your sensations, or I mean, all these. What you're used to thinking of as all these categories is not being negated or canceled out, but none of it is actually those categories. Those categories are imaginary labelings of something that is not like that is not that.
Words, in other words.
Yeah, they're just words. They're empty words. They're hollow lies. They're pretty hypotheses that turn out to have no accuracy at all. If you get confused by that, think of a dream. In a dream, there can seem to be so many conditions present, and beings present, and actions present, and bodies, and minds, and all of it has history and all this stuff. And you wake up and you look at the dream and you think, there was nothing there. There were no bodies there. There were no worlds there. There was no event there whatsoever. It looked like it was, but the only thing that was actually there was the fact of dreaming itself. And that, likewise, the only thing that is here is the experiential field. And of course, what we call dreaming is just another name for the experiential field.
There's such an attachment to this real here. And to be able to loosen the grip of that attachment to this is real. Why is this any more real than my dream? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is real. This is completely real. Your dream is completely real. Deep sleep is completely real. They're all completely real. But they're only real when they're showing up right now. They're only real if they're being experienced right now.
Oh, I never had that piece before.
Well, that's why I like the word actuality. Forget the word real. Real is very abstract. Actuality means what is actual. And if you look experientially, obviously what is actual is only actual here and now, because you can't find any other actuality. So this is completely actual. But it's not a world, it's not bodies, it's not a conversation, it's just this, because what it really is cannot be put into words, and those words have implications that are inaccurate.
So actuality just this.
Yes, actuality just this. And then look at that. Don't hold that as another abstraction. Don't hold that as a buzzword. use that as a jumping off point to engage with what it refers to, which is
what is here.
yeah, which is a nonverbal, obvious, self-evident, self-verifying condition, and it's the soul condition. It's very simple. The only way you can get in trouble is trying to overcomplicate it, which is the normal human mode. You know, we're experts at being with this in very complicated fashions. I mean, it has infinite differentiation, so it has an infinity of qualities, so it can seem complicated, but it's not really complicated because the complications don't actually exist as separate things. Like a dream can seem complicated, but of course since it's only the thing there is dreaming, it's not complicated, it just looks that way. A dream has no moving parts, it just looks like it does. And likewise, this world here, this waking world so-called, has no moving parts, it just looks like it does. It's just this experiential field that sits here without moving. What seems to show up in it moves a lot, but it itself does not move. Here doesn't budge. Now doesn't budge. Here doesn't budge. Now doesn't budge. And everything that seems to come and go in it is just it presenting this that is here now presenting itself. And the presentations themselves have no autonomous existence and essentially no reality except as presentations of this. It's really very simple. Well, look at your own experience. Can you find anything other than your experiential field right here, right now?
No.
Well, I mean, if you can't find it, the idea that it exists is just a fantasy or a hypothesis, and if you hold that fantasy or hypothesis, you hold it right here, right now. Mm-hmm. So it itself is just more right here, right now, presenting itself. But even getting caught up in the mind is just this. You can't leave this. You're caught up in the mind, you haven't gone anywhere. Where are you? You're here. When are you? You're now. What are you? You're this. Oh, I'm really thinking of all this stuff. You know, thinking of all this stuff is a euphemism for this. It can look like thinking, it can look like moving, it can look like, you know, moving your body around, it can look like talking, it can look like going to sleep, it can look like dreaming, it can look like dying, it can look like anything. But it's always exactly all of that it looks like just appears in this exact same thing that is this here now. You remember that the Ram Dass book, his first book, Be Here Now? Yeah. It's like, as an admonition to be here now, it's a joke because when else could you possibly be?
Yeah.
But you say is here now. That's just like that's the whole story. There's nothing else to say. That's everything right there in that sentence. And then all of the complications and ramifications are just the fractal infinity of what is here now looks like to itself.
I think I'm getting a better sense listening as to these complications.
Yeah. Don't follow the complications. See what they actually are. And they're
right.
all presentations, you could say, images. You know, I mean, images implies visual, but you know, in sound, in the field of hearing, you might call it sounds. But they're all just presentations of the energetic liveliness of this that is here. And that energy is not a new thing. That energy is the energy of this that is here, presenting itself to itself as whatever it happens to look like. It's very simple. Look at what is actual, i.e., look at experience, which is it's a silly thing to say because you can't not look at it. It's not like looking at experience as opposed to not looking at experience. Looking at experience just means notice that in fact experience is present, experience is presenting itself, and feel very sensitively, very intelligently what and the way in which this is so. Not analytically. Don't think about it. Don't try to make sense of it. Just feel it like hedonistically. Feel it like you're listening to a symphony. Feel it like you're enjoying the quality of fabric or something. Feel it like a sensual experience. Feel light. Light is always present. What does light feel like? What's the texture of light? What's the texture of sound? What's the texture of thought? And all of these things that we used to think of as so different actually have the same texture. And and look for yourself at the way this is so. Look for yourself at what is here. And in doing that, you'll discover how it's here. You won't discover it rationally. You won't discover it in a way that you can say or talk about or think about, but you will discover it, you will learn to know it intimately with your transcendental intelligence, which is your true nature. Your transcendental intelligence is what you are, you always have been. That's what's looking out your eyes right now, is your transcendental intelligence. And it takes a certain amount of acclimation for people who are accustomed to normal human modes to appreciate the inherent intelligence, because it's not a rational intelligence. It's not an intelligence of thinking, like, oh, I'm thinking about this, or it's not an intelligence of analysis. It's an intelligence like, it's the intelligence of patterning, of experiential energy. It's the intelligence of a rainbow. It's the intelligence of a cloud. It's the intelligence of a hand. This is inconceivably intelligent. Look at this. Look at how intricate that is. Look at how precise it is. Look at all these different ways that it can move and all the things it can do. It's like, that doesn't happen by thinking about it. That doesn't happen by describing it. How does that happen? That's the inherent intelligence. The inherent intelligence is how you breathe. The inherent intelligence is how your heart beats. The inherent intelligence is how the light bulbs in this room are shining. The inherent intelligence is how gravity is holding everything down to the floor. It's this inconceivable functionality that all the patterning of experiential patterns is imbued with and consists of. And it's easy to get to get the hang of it just by feeling it. Feeling things like beauty are very explicit manifestations of the inherent intelligence. You see a beautiful sunset, or you admire the beauty of the intricacy of a hand, or you look at a light bulb and look at its warm glow and just go, wow, that's just that amazing presence. That is evidence of, and that is functioning of, the inherent intelligence that's very naked and very clear and quite accessible. And you don't have to think about it. It's just, it's immediately obvious. The inherent intelligence has no process. With human thought, we're used to thinking about something, and there's the thing, and then there's the thought about it, and then there's some kind of result or output. It seems like a process or a time lag. The inherent intelligence is instantaneous. The inherent intelligence is in its manifestation. It's complete. So the beauty of a sunset is right there in the sunset. It doesn't have any extra processing where you need to go and sit and scratch your head and say, gosh, I wonder if that looks nice. You just look at it and you go, wow. It's just, it's manifest. It's actual, right? Without process, without any separate subsystems needing to be engaged. Yes, Nancy.
So the word that I'm going to use is attending to. I mean, you don't really need to attend to a sunset because they are gorgeous. They are just, wow. I mean, you'd have to be just checked out. but let's just say it's other circumstances, just kind of, your normal everyday, that's not grabbing your attention. It would seem to be attending to.
No. An attending that you can do or not do is an imaginary pretending. That's an attending of the conceptual mind. The actual attending is the presence of attention, and the presence of attention is an evidence if you're experiencing something. Right now you're seeing your computer. So that means you're attending to it. You might not be thinking about it. You might think it's boring or ugly or mundane or whatever. But in actual fact, your computer is just like a sunset. Your computer has major wow factor. Imagine you were completely blasted out of your mind on LSD, and all of a sudden you looked at your computer. It's like, what would you see? You'd go, you would just be blown away. You would what? I mean, you wouldn't. It would be too much. And that wow factor is the nature of all experience, the nature of any experience. It's more obvious in things that we allow to allow ourselves to appreciate, like a sunset or something, or sex, or whatever, for an individual, or an amazing, say you're eating a meal that's just heavenly delicious. You take a bite of something and you go, oh my God, that's good. Just that whole wow, what is that? What's it made of? There's no logic there. That wow is exactly the same thing when you notice it in something that you think of as amazing, as in something you think of as mundane or boring or stupid or normal.
It would seem like to the more mundane things, there might just need to be more sensitivity, but you're saying no, it's all one thing.
You notice that there already is full sensitivity. When you see your computer, you're seeing it with total sensitivity. The presence of experience is sensitivity. So if you see something, that's full-on 100% sensitivity already, right there. If you have a narration, a story that is showing up in your mind of, oh, this ugly old computer, I should really get a new one, this thing's kind of dirty and run down and slow, doesn't work very well, and I don't know how to run it. All that story is also here, maybe, if it is, or whatever. But that has nothing to do with what you're seeing. A certain amount of it can be a useful experiment or useful training, is separate out your experiential fields. Notice how when something is present in your field of vision, if something else is present in your field of hearing, it doesn't actually affect what's in your field of vision. Your field of vision does not impinged upon by your field of hearing. Your field of vision is not impinged on by your field of thought either.
Right.
So if I look at my computer and I say, God, what an ugly old piece of crap computer, and if I look at my computer and say, God, this beautiful, amazing gem, I'm so fortunate to have it, what I'm seeing doesn't change. It's exactly the same thing in either case. And normalcy is a fantasy line. Normalcy is a storyline. Oh, this is normal. This is an ugly computer. God, this is boring. When's something interesting going to happen? That's all thought.
Yeah.
And that happens in the realm of thought, but it does not impinge upon the realm of vision, or the realm of touch, or the realm of hearing, because they all exist independently, and they don't block each other. Sound doesn't block vision. Vision doesn't block touch. They happen concurrently, and they don't impinge on each other. They don't get in each other's way.
Yeah.
And notice, look very carefully at experience. You can do this, and notice the way in which that's so. And then you can extricate these. You can say, boy, this feels normal, and look. So then you can parse your experience and say, well, what's going on here? There's the presence of light, which is just inconceivable. You don't know what light is. It's a miraculous apparition, unceasing, and in fact, you never see exactly the same pattern of light twice. So it's always new, it's always interesting, it's always surprising. Well, exactly what you're seeing right now in your field of vision, you have never seen precisely that before. Never. It's a whole new world. Every instant is an entirely new experience. Entirely. You know, the idea that there's a computer out there, there is no computer. There's the experience of what I'm calling a computer, and the experience never repeats. I've never seen this computer that's on my lap twice the same way. Every time I see it, it's a new vision. There's different angle of light, everything is different. And the idea that there's something out there that isn't different, or that's boring, or that's normal, is pure fantasy.
Right.
And that fantasy, that narration, that storyline doesn't actually impinge on the sensory experience. And conversely, the sensory experience doesn't impinge on the storyline.
So it seems like it impinges, the storyline seems like it impinges, but it really doesn't, is what I'm hearing you say.
Well, it claims to. Thought is very, analytical thought is very, what's the word? It pretends to be invasive. It pretends to be about things. So thought claims to be much more powerful and central than it really is. Thought thinks it knows about everything, and so it thinks it has a handle on everything, and so then since thought claims to have a handle on everything, then there's nothing in the things themselves to have any additional information or input. But that's a lie, because thought doesn't know anything about anything else. Thought only knows about itself. Thought is not actually referential, and this is something to look at very closely. The commonplace idea of thought, analytical thought, is I'm thinking about things. There's no such thing as about. All a thought means is the presence of a thought. So thought is about itself, just like light means. So right now there's light in my field of vision. It's not about anything else. It's about the presence of light in my field of vision. Right now there's thought appearing in my mind, but the thought is just like the light. It's just energy that's appearing. It's not about anything other than the fact that energy is appearing. It makes claim to be about it, but it isn't really.
So did you say thought is or is not referential?
Is not. There is nothing refers to anything else. It claims to, and that's the confusion. That's the lie.